Hello everybody, good afternoon. My name is Terry Chelikowski. I'm the Executive Director at the Florida Alliance for Community Solutions, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Nonprofit Sustainability. Our speaker today is Dr. Sandra Brahm, who did a session with us last year at our conference, and she was just amazing in talking about sustainability and succession planning. And since this has been a real topic of interest for many of the members, we've decided to offer some additional webinars on that. And this is the second of two in that series. So next slide, please. So these webinars are brought to you by the TD Charitable Foundation. Hopefully Rob West from TD Bank will be able to join us a little bit later, but they have been funding this webinar series for us for 3 years now. This is something that happened not long right after COVID. So just some housekeeping things. If you're comfortable being on camera, please go ahead and turn your cameras on. If you're not, during the presentation, if you would mute yourself so that we don't have any feedback issues. Comments and questions can go in the chat box, or you can raise your hand. I'll be monitoring that. Please be respectful. We are recording the call, and you will receive a copy of this within a couple of weeks afterwards. The materials will also be made available, but only to folks who have registered and joined the session. And because you're participating in this, we may call you at some point just to see, if what you got out of it, and if you found this a valuable use of your time. So there may be some follow-up. But I think what I will do now then is just turn this over to Sandra, and we'll get going.
There we go. My keyboard is getting a little stuck here. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for this session. I want to briefly go over the agenda. I'm going to be mindful of the time. We will promptly end and wrap up by 4:30. And so we'll have a break in the middle here to give us time. So basically, we're going to, look at, you've heard the goal, we'll go over the goals of the session, find out who's joining us today, because that might be relevant to how some of our discussions follow through. Also, we're really going to delve into sustainability and what does that really mean for organizations like yours. And we'll have a break. We're going to look at a little history of sustainability, because I think it's important. As we think about sustainability then and now, how has sustainability evolved this conversation over time? And while it's a relatively new conversation in the way we refer to sustainability today, it really is also new in the way we think about it and continually changing. So we'll visit about that. We are also going to have a fair opportunity to discuss it. The goal is not for me to talk at you, but for us to have an engaging session where you'll be asked to discuss amongst ourselves. It's a small enough group for us to do that, and to contribute thoughts in the chat that will also help us to move along and spend a little more time in Q&A. So first, as we think about the goals of the session, we want to certainly delve into sustainability and get deeper into understanding the elements and how we are going to apply those elements to our organization. And as I thought about this session and have began spending so much time in this innovation space and AI space, and have begun to think about how we're utilizing or may utilize artificial intelligence to help achieve some of our goals down the road, I thought it was a great opportunity to have this discussion from the standpoint of corporations, housing corporations, community development, and just to explore how rapidly our sector is being impacted by artificial intelligence. So we'll spend more time talking about that. And then really want you to leave here today with some concrete tools and ideas and a commitment to begin to explore sustainability in a more intentional and thoughtful manner relative to your organization and your role in your organization. Any questions so far? All right, well, let's delve right in. So let's find out first who's in the room. And this is just a short little poll to help me gauge who you are, the size of your organization, etc. Terry?
Okay, I am launching the poll. There are 5 questions, so you're gonna have to scroll down through there. So we'll take a minute. Take a couple of minutes, and when I start seeing numbers, we'll carry on. There's only 3 of you, so let's shoot for 100% here.
There we go.
I just got one poll. Is that all you're supposed to have?
There's one poll, but
Yes.
there are multiple questions.
Well, there were only 3 questions on mine.
You may have to slide it down a bit.
Well,
There's
that's fine, I see that.
There's a little scroll bar on the right.
I don't see it.
All right.
Well, we can go on and move forward. It gives me sort of an idea of,
I'm sharing the
where-
results. Sandra, if you'd like to, talk about those.
oh, I see. So we have board meetings monthly or every other month and not sure. And then the board's fundraising, yes. In some cases, no, in other cases. So that certainly impacts sustainability. And advocacy also is a bit split, which could impact sustainability. And it's always great to know that the boards are aware of the organizational challenges. That's very important. And also that the board knows and regularly discusses pressing financial issues. So thank you for that, Terry. So now that we know who's in the room, I want us to just think a little bit about sustainability. If you are able to type into the chat, I just want just 30 seconds. What are elements of sustainability? If you were to define it, what are a few key elements of sustainability? We'll put that in the chat. And then I'll look to see here. What do you think sustainability involves? Don't be scared. Nobody wants to answer that question? Okay, there we go. Thank you, Tara. Definitely the ability to keep funding coming in. You can continue to answer those questions. Thank you, Terry. Ability to continue providing services. One of the things that we note in thinking about sustainability, and we'll come back to the chat, but you can continue to add through there. When we hear a lot about sustainability, certainly I've sat in on some chamber boards, and they're always talking about sustainability when it comes to natural resources. Here in Florida, we hear sustainability, you know, preserving our waters, preserving our, you know, our natural lands, you know, and preserving, you know, our area down in the Everglades. And so when we think about nonprofit sustainability, you know, we focus in on, I guess I would ask, what are the natural resources of nonprofit sustainability, if we were going to think about it that way? So Oxford gives a definition, but that's that very ecological definition. And then if you look at the National Council of Nonprofits, they basically describe sustainability as a financial sustainability plan that allows a nonprofit, and someone put that in the chat, how do you sustain yourself over the long term so that you're able to support your mission? Now, I always think about what it means to me, so I came up with my own definition. So this is Sandra's definition of sustainability for nonprofits. And you'll note that I underlined a few key words there. That number one, it's a written and actionable plan. And so it's not enough to just say it's a plan, but where is it written? And is it something that we can act on? And it ensures that we're able to maintain, here we go with those nonprofit resources, monetary resources, human resources, and capital resources. And I added, certainly not just that we're being sustained in the long term, but that we are being sustained through periods of transition. And so as we think about the most recent big period of transition that has come on the heel of the pandemic, of course, where many organizations shifted focus. Some didn't make it, a number didn't make it, others came back, others have grown, but it's about being able to withstand these periods of transition with a written and actionable plan with sufficient resources. So when we think about these components of nonprofit sustainability, and I do want to note that you will get copies of these slides as already noted, as long as you attend and you're here and you answer the survey at the end of today. So don't feel like you have to take too many copious notes, but here's some things that you can immediately think about. One, a strong mission and vision. And then you have a strategic plan. Some of this is elementary right now in the sense that, you know, many of you already have done this, and you do have a strategic plan, and this may seem like common sense, but basically we're going to go through this and peel off these layers. And we want to start certainly with the background. Another component is this financial strength and discipline. So we're going to spend more time later talking about financial strength. Engaged board of directors. So it's concerning if your board of directors is not involved in advocacy for your organization, if your board of directors is not involved in trying to help think through how the organization fundraises, how you develop those networks to ensure that you have the financial resources to be sustained. So this is a key component of sustainability, is the role of your board. And it's important that we have conversations with our board about their role in our sustainability, because it's often easy to point the finger and say, you're the director and we pay you the big money, you know, to solve all of these problems. But the board also has a strong role in that. Data management now is a huge component of sustainability, because we don't quite know where we are if we don't have a good handle on our data. So we'll come back to that as well. And this leadership succession plan. And I put that in quotes because it's not just a plan for your succession as an executive director, as a CEO, as a CFO, or as a key volunteer. It's also about your board leaders' succession planning. If your board is tossing up a coin to see who the next leader is going to be, that's not a succession plan. And so we want to get very intentional about how we begin the process of identifying board members, bringing on board leaders, training board leaders, and having them fully engage in their role as leaders. I noted this community resource map because many times, if you don't know what's around your community, what resources are there that you can rely on during periods of transition, partners that you can connect with during these lean periods or during periods where there's great change, that community resource map becomes very important. So who has access to capital? Who has access, to residents? Who has housing if you don't have it? Who has access to mental health resources if you find that that's something that's bogging down, your organization? And so you want a community resource map of all these things that you may need to draw on to solve the problems that you may not necessarily have the resources yourself to solve, but that you can bring on someone else to take on during lean times as you plan for focusing in on other things that are going to help you to be sustainable. And then there is this whole notion of presence. And where are you in the community, whether it's online and whether it's physically there? And I want to tell you that this is one of those things that you really can't get away from. And it doesn't matter if if you love hanging around people or if you just rather be at your desk, if you're an introvert or you're an extrovert. Even introverts, have that extroversion scale where you prepare yourself to go out and network. And it's super important now, because if you are not present, if they don't see you in the community, it's very hard to build the relationships with banks, with the corporate sector, and to tell your story. It's so much, and you all know this, it's so much who you know, but it's, if you've been with your organization for 20 years and, you're winding down in your career, and maybe you say, well, I don't really need, to spend so much time out there. I've been there, done that, and I've built the company. But if you're trying to retire, for example, and you haven't really focused on your succession plan, it's helpful for you to get back out there and to begin making those connections again and reconnecting, because whoever comes behind you is going to need those relationships. And that's a part of you laying that foundation so that whoever comes behind is ready to step in and then nurture and grow those relationships. So even if you've been there, done that, to think about succession planning and who's coming after, and this presence that you really need to have in the community and online. I can't stress enough how important it is to do that. I try to connect with people on LinkedIn, which is the biggest professional network where we find ourselves. And I'm amazed at how many people don't have their LinkedIn profiles complete. And it's amazing how many people I've connected with on LinkedIn who have podcasts and all of these tools where they're trying to bring in educated folks, bring in people who can tell them about the community, about all the things that they're doing that's available to support families, that's supporting the elderly, that's supporting, whatever your particular group is. And they're there for the taking. But if they're not finding you online, then you're missing those opportunities to be present, to tell your story, to make connections, to have banks hear from you what your needs are, what your challenges are, what your goals are and priorities, and what you're doing to make sure that you're sustainable. I'm going to pause for a minute and just take a quick breath so that I can give anyone, if you have a comment about that or a thought about that, you can unmute yourself and let's just chat for a second relative to these components of nonprofit sustainability. Any thoughts?
I have
Tara,
a
go
question.
ahead.
So, just to give a little background, I'm part of the leadership succession plan here. I'm currently the deputy on the fast track to take over when our executive director retires in the next 2 years. So part of my role is to start creating some of those community resources and community relationships. And with what we do, we're a TA provider for self-help housing, and we work with DOL as well for permanent and temporary assistance to migrant farm workers. So what I'm finding, and so what I'm asking for is, do you have any ways to like the people, I know there's contacts that I need to make. The problem that I'm having is the local buy-in for the affordable housing component.
Or are you dealing with NIMBY when you say that?
So no, I'm dealing with people that are not relatable to our mission. They've not experienced what it's like to struggle. They don't know the fight that I would say probably 75% of our population is in with affordable housing.
That's right. You're down in
we're in South Central Florida.
Yes, okay.
So.
Yeah, I got you.
So I'm trying to find a way to get the buy-in, because we can't even tap into like CDBG or any of those things because our county is not interested. They're just not interested. So it's like, how do I get them interested?
So that's a great question. I'm really glad you asked, because this whole leadership piece of this is not taking no for an answer. And I know that sounds, bad, but it really, while you're facing a challenging area, to me, it puts even more pressure on you to engage with the corporate sector and making sure, for example, your organization, it may cost $1,000 and you say, we don't have $1,000. But let's just say it may cost you $1,000 to become a member of, I'll say the Naples Chamber of Commerce. I'm just using that as an example. And it will be the best $1,000 you ever spent, because people don't buy in because they don't really know what you're doing. They're making assumptions about what you're doing. And the challenge is to put yourself to be present in this space where the folks are who are making those decisions. So the Chamber of Commerce, most of them have housing boards, because even though you may be very in a wealthy community, everyone is looking for housing, and housing and affordable housing is showing up on folks' doorsteps. And I think one example I would say is our Chamber of Commerce in St. Pete started a YIMBY campaign. Yes, in my backyard, because
Okay.
they were able to make the connection between the fact that you can live, behind your picket fence and have this amazing mansion that you live in, but where are your workers living? How are they getting to work? And when that community is no longer affordable, they're not going to, and number two, can they even get a bus to near
Right.
where you live?
No, we
And they're
have no
moving
public transportation.
further and further and further out. They don't have to work in your organization. I'm saying your, but I'm saying this house or this company,
Right.
this restaurant that you love to go to. Where are your waiters and waitresses living? Where are your fire department and teachers living? So they started a YIMBY campaign for Yes in My Backyard to educate this same type of community that you're talking about on what it's going to take for them to have employees, for them to maintain the restaurants, all the, the condo associations and all the who's cutting your grass and who's doing this and who's doing that, the workers.
Right.
So put yourself in those spaces and you begin that conversation, but join the chamber. That's one thing, because it will be the best $1,000 that you ever spent. And join a committee of the chamber and get involved in where you can be. Then the other place where you're gonna want to have a presence is certainly there's a ton of women's organizations that are out there that are doing great work and that are now putting women in spaces where and answering tough questions. They are doing, their investors, they're angel investors, they're founders of their own companies. And so I would encourage you to look for the women's groups in your community. And some of them are through the chamber, some may be through religious organizations, some may be just through business, association of business women's organizations, things like that. But I think you start with the business community, with the chamber, because when you talk about jobs and the fact that people need a place to live and they have to be accessible to where they work, now you're speaking their language. So you got to flip the script and begin that conversation. I love this conversation. Well, we can talk more about it later.
And-
Thanks for
and if
asking that.
Yeah,
Yes.
if I could add too, Sandra, so Tara, being a member of the Alliance, and other organizations that that are part of your sector is also really helpful because, for example, I could say, okay, I didn't know you were having this problem, but now that I know you're having this problem, I can connect you very easily to other members, at other organizations and that have gone through similar situations, so that you'll have an opportunity. You can actually get it. You can call somebody, you can email them, you can create a relationship, and pick their brains, and you can try things and share, your responses and things like that. So I think Sandra really hit on the high point. You just have to be out there. I mean, they're used to seeing, the current CEO, okay, or maybe not, maybe they haven't really been out there. And so, so you just may have to just start from scratch. If you assume that they know who you are and what you do, that's probably not a good idea. And they have to be reminded every year at a minimum, because people change positions. There's no reason why you guys shouldn't be accessing CDBG money.
Agreed. Agreed.
Small city CDBG you guys should absolutely have a handle on that stuff. So, I
And
made
then you
notes.
also
I'll get
invite
back with you
your council representatives and
to come
commissioners.
see your stuff. Come to
Well,
your
so-
office.
have to
So
do
here's
that.
part of the
Be
smaller
a
part is
development.
we haven't developed anything. We're just starting. So our contract with USDA has been 30 plus years. Our grant with DOL has also been 30 plus years. So here in the last year, we've began, we actually have a certified loan packager for 502 loans.
Okay.
So that's one of the new things that we've started to create some sustainability down the road by collecting packaging fees and those kinds of things. So we're in a position we don't really have anything to see, and I have been participating in some of the chamber stuff because we
Okay.
are a member of the chamber.
Good.
So, but it is me, our executive director. He's amazing, but he's only been here for like 3 years. So we're both kind of learning who the players are at this point. So, but I am definitely down for the long haul and trying to
That's
figure out
great.
who everybody is and what I have to do. And hey, yeah, sure, here, let's go have a drink and talk about affordable housing because I am
What it's
down
gonna
for it.
take.
Yeah,
And
Absolutely.
think about it in terms, what we also learned is that we know what affordable housing is, but you're gonna need to use terms like workforce housing,
right.
because they're just not gonna get affordable. When you say affordable, it's the NIMBY, and it's like, oh, you wouldn't want a teacher living next door to you, you wouldn't want a fireman living next door to you, you wouldn't want, a manager of your favorite restaurant. It's just, you have to
Yeah.
put it in terms of affordability, which is very different here in Florida.
Right. It is. So,
I,
okay.
I have to say though, and I'm not disagreeing with you, and I apologize. I have been listening, but I have someone making repairs here. That things have moved depending on where you are in this state by using workforce and affordability. And here in South Florida, in Palm Beach County, where I work, we don't use workforce anymore because the chambers have adopted workforce, which is up to 140 AMI. And guess what the median income in Palm Beach County is? It's 98,000. So
Wow.
we go back to affordable and don't
Okay.
apologize for it. I mean, it's very contextual. I just wanted to say you really have to think it through, and there's a lot of discussion about it.
That is a great point. Thank you so much, because affordability down there is regular up here in Pasco County and Hillsborough, and you're absolutely right. So thank you so much for bringing up that. Don't be afraid, but if you see they're not receptive, ebb and flow. So let's talk a little bit about, let's shift to financial strength and discipline. And I believe after that, we have a short break. So these are basically components of financial strength. And part of it, of course, in thinking about sustainability, is budgeting and knowing what your revenue streams are. This may seem like a simple conversation, but the larger you get, and as you, Tara, are forced into a role, sometimes you don't really know what you don't know. And there are revenue streams there that come in certain ways, like we recently discovered because we had a new CFO. And you have to know, these financials, that there was pledges coming in that were being recorded in our development office, but they weren't showing up on the financials. And I finally looked at that and I'm like, where are the pledges? It hit me that we were missing, we've raised all this money. Where is it showing up? And when we got the technology company on the phone, it's like, oh, you have to push this button and do that. And so the new CFO didn't realize, and the second in command was out on FMLA. So they didn't realize they had to take this extra step to recognize that revenue. And so what I'm saying is, know your revenue streams. It's a conversation you've got to really get your head around. Know your projected expenses, and not just, what is my budget, and we spend, and but what are your projected expenses every month and how are we sticking to it? And then that cash management piece is huge, because you can have a large surplus, what looks like a surplus on your bottom line of assets and resources, but it's not cash. And that cash, of course, is king when it comes to fixing things and paying staff. And so you're going to monitor your cash flow and, your payment management. Payment management is important, especially, you look at for-profit agencies and they will tell you it's net 30, and that's how we pay. We pay it within, it's 30 days. But everyone with these nonprofits, they want us to pay in 10 days. And the truth of the matter is, it's like you have some control over these things that you can negotiate when you engage these vendors. And it's like, you know what, 10 days isn't going to work for us. We can do it in 21 days, or we can do a net 30, or we can do it, but buy yourself time on this payment management, because just because that bill is due, you negotiate those terms. Don't let people tell you how to spend your own money when you need it, month to month, and the pressures are increasing on nonprofits as we work to stay up with salary demands and deferred maintenance and all the other things that we're trying to do to fill shortfalls. So I like to say, accelerate your collections, decelerate your payables, and negotiate when those things are due. And do you have a reserve? If you don't have a reserve, think about how you can begin starting a reserve. Get with your board of directors as the policy making body and say, we need a policy for cash reserves. And while, we may be living month to month, I believe we can take $1,000 and begin a cash reserve over here. And if we do our best, we know that there may be months when we need to pull it back and the board can approve those, but let's start to build up this cash reserve and be intentional about it. Cost management. What are all of these costs, and being clear about how they're categorized. Cost reduction strategies. And again, we were just talking about reviewing the vendors and renegotiating contracts. Now I'll pause and give a quick little example of this. When I was CEO of another organization in Texas, we had a ton of vendors and we had a rogue purchasing director. And without getting into all the details of that, once I began to see the product that these vendors who had been with the company for some 15 to 20 years with this rogue purchasing director, so there was this incestuous relationship, so to speak. One example is we were paying $7,000 a month for printing services, and we were getting $1,200 worth of work. But the contract was, you're going to pay us $7,000 a month, and we're going to do all the printing that you need throughout the whole year. It sounds like a good deal if you're a big company, right? Except they were historically 3 months late, and they were only doing $1,200 worth of work. And so guess what? Find that contract. We need 30 days notice. I'm giving you your 30 days notice. We're going to end this and we're going to engage another company. We're going to do a bid and engage another company. And sometimes you really need to look at who your vendors are, what you're paying them. Are they giving you a great service for that? And even if they are, every 3 to 4 years, put it out there for bid and be competitive and stay competitive. And then use technology to streamline costs. And this is where we began this conversation on AI. And there was a presentation that I went to recently, and I was looking for it. as I was preparing for this presentation. And what I'll do, Terry, I'm going to try to find that slide and we'll add it to your resources. But it literally was a beautiful slide of about 25 AI tools. And, we hear a lot about, oh, ChatGPT. Like we think ChatGPT is the only AI software out there. But I was shocked to learn of all of these AI tools and resources to help you do analyses on your budget, to help you analyze data. If you collect incidents, for example, you have an incident reporting system. And depending on how sophisticated it is, if you're doing that on spreadsheets, then there are tools in AI where you can have it read those things and give it directions to begin analyzing what your trends are and what the issues and challenges are. But I do want to send you that, Terry, to share with those who are here, because that's part of, I think, what woke me up to where this AI is going. And that with a colleague who basically was having a conversation, and she's a major investor and angel investor in startup companies, and she's worth about $50 million. But her and these other tech people we're talking about AI. And if you're not using it, if you're not trying to figure it out, you're being left behind quickly, and we don't even realize it because of this fear that we have of AI and where is it going? And well, do I want to use it? It's like, whether you want to or not, it's evolving, it's being utilized, and we have to figure out how that looks for us as nonprofit organizations, as housing organizations, as leaders who are trying to see trends and come up with solutions. And then the other thing in this cost management piece is, avoiding mistakes, with the billing and not optimizing reimbursements. And I put myself out there because our organization has doubled in size in 4 years. We were a $30 million organization, and now we're a $60 million organization post-COVID. And that has happened so quickly. We've had to add employees. We've had to add infrastructure. We've had to add technology, and we're not there yet. And because of all of these changes happening so quickly, we began to look at our budget and look at the projections, and I'm asking questions. Where's this? Where's this? Where's this? Where are our receivables? Where's that? Come to find out, we had an organization that was holding close to $600,000 of our money because a case manager had left a couple of the boxes unchecked. So you've got accounting and finance that's here doing the billing, and they're looking at, they're not, it's not their job necessarily specifically to look over the report that's coming out of the frontline case manager. They want to know, do the numbers add up? This what that's what we spent. The receipts are here. Okay, great. We can bill and draw down the money. Well, they got those reports and managers missed it. And that's what growth does to you. And so it's like our own mistake was causing us to have cash flow issues because we're sitting here, people holding our money. So now you've got to go back and retrain staff, make sure that they understand their connection to the agency being whole, that they're not, missing, dotting an I and crossing a T and sending it up line. Because it wasn't until we asked, and why? This is the way it works. It wasn't until we went back to the funder and said, why are you holding our money? That they said, oh, because you made mistakes on your report. Now, what were they doing? They were decelerating their payable. Because we made a mistake. We're trying to get our money. We're trying to accelerate our collection. But we've got a mistake in our paperwork, and they didn't come back to us and say, Oh, you've got a mistake. They waited for us to call them and say, where's our money? Oh, you need to correct this mistake. So now we correct the mistake and we get our money. But this is a game right now that people, it sounds like a game, but it's the reality of cash flow. And I'm going to stop for a minute and give you all the time to comment on that. If anybody has anything. Okay, I'm going to keep going and then we'll get through this. And then I think we have our break after that. Then you have risk management. Of course, you all know about risk management, a line of credit, which is very important. It doesn't have to be a huge line of credit, but you do want access to some line of credit. With our size, we have a $2 million line of credit. If you're not as big as us, you know, you might only need a $100,000 line of credit, but you should establish a relationship with a bank and have a line of credit if you don't. And then, of course, right now we're talking about donors and the role of donations, and it may be a new mindset and thinking about how donors are helping housing corporations and community development projects. But there is a need to develop a donor portfolio and to begin this thought process of fundraising, because the capital, you know, there's capital out there, there's cash out there as well, but we've got to make those connections, and that donor may be a banker, right? But it's a relationship also that you've established that's going to have them choose your project over something else. And then, do you have an endowment? Do you have other financial resources? So let's take a break for 5 minutes. We can turn off our camera. It's 3:55. We'll come back at 4 o'clock.
See everybody in 5. Hey, Sandra.
Welcome back, Terry. Welcome back, Tara.
Thank you.
Tara, we probably need to set up a time and have a chat.
Oh, I would love that.
Okay.
I would love it.
I don't know if Annetta and Terry are
I
back.
I suspect that they are, so I say we just
Okay,
carry on.
great. Thank you all so much. I hope you enjoyed your break. Let's So I wanted to spend a moment just thinking about sustainability in the way that we may have thought about it in the 50s and 70s and 80s and the 210s and 220 to the future. There's certainly no scientific research behind this, but this is, again, as I think about and I try to watch trends and see where things are common. And so in thinking about the evolution of sustainability as we work to shift our thinking and to move forward into where we find ourselves today. I like to think about the 50s through the 70s as the galas and gloves, major funders, back in the day when everyone, had their big gowns, and you still see some of that today. But really, that was kind of how people raised money back in the day to sustain nonprofits, was galas and gloves and these big major fundraisers with great philanthropists, right? And then in the 80s to the 10s, maybe a little longer, it's not scientific. We think about the evolution of luncheons and events. We're gonna do all kinds of events. You have, when did all of the parade events, the runs, the 5Ks and all of these things that began happening to raise money from events. And so we began to diversify our funding in so many ways. And also we began to see more diversity in the way of how people, were spending their money, and the evolution of organizations even more so to support the housing needs and the community development needs of individuals who struggle for housing and jobs and resources and opportunities. Now we think about just since COVID and where we are, how we have significantly overnight shifted to this virtual space in a way that if you're not doing things virtually today, then you're even finding it hard to have a workforce, because now folks don't even want to commit to coming into an office 5 days a week, when before COVID, it really wasn't questioned. Everyone's trying to figure out, how do we incorporate virtual work into our job? And then overnight, we figured it out. And I think that is how the speed of this sustainability conversation, the speed of how this is impacting nonprofits and of all forms is upon us. It's something that we have to learn quickly from, and we have to take some calculated risk and do some things differently, because we're seeing a very different approach to how people want to engage, how funders want to engage, how other organizations need to partner and want to partner. And you're seeing, again, more use of this AI, more donor-directed funds, which gets beyond the, it's funny, Terry and I were discussing earlier about just the roles of banks and how, we could go and apply for bank foundation grants and CRA funding, and we were talking about the CDBG funding. And now there's so much money that is individual donor directed. You know, it's not necessarily coming from the United Way, which was one of those, you know, big organizations in the 70s and 80s and historically that took all this money and gave it away. Now we have individuals who are directing their own resources. All the more reason for presence and for being where these folks are and where they're making decisions, Tara. And so, you know, there are trade-offs also in thinking about how we sustain ourselves. This sort of, I'm going to give you this if you give me that. You know, we hear that there's no free lunch, and there really is, it's hard to get something for nothing today. So what is the trade-off that you're expected to give in order to get those resources that you need? And they're different for every organization, but we have to think about that when we think about sustainability, because it's not just going out and asking for money. Now I have to say, okay, this organization, the Tampa Bay Lightning, gives away $50,000 every home game, right? And they're going to give it away, but they still are looking for a special story. And it's like, how many special stories do you have? And we've been fortunate to have a special story almost every year. But it's like you're getting creative and going to, you know, well, maybe the story is about a family this time and someone in your community that's always committed themselves to housing, you know. And then the next story is about, wow, it's about the mental health that we find ourselves struggling with in the housing corporation. So you find someone that you can, and I'm just giving you examples of how you're constantly trying to crack that nut of what is it going to take for that funder, that organization, that bank. How have they shifted their priorities, and how are you shifting your story to go after that money? And so this next generation donor, this next generation program, nonprofit that we're trying to lead is very different than the one that we started with in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And so it behooves us also to bring this, even the next generation up under, depending on how many employees are in your workforce. Tara, you're like the heir apparent. So who's your heir apparent? And if you haven't thought about your heir apparent, you need to be thinking about that. And who's their heir apparent? It's almost like you've got to go down to the front line and cross-train people on almost every aspect of your business so that you're ready when these things happen that are unplanned, so that we have the tools to toss it down to the next level when someone in the middle leaves.
Right.
I'm trying to get, my thing keeps sticking here. Where are you? Here we go. So again, I'm just going to rush through these to kind of show you sort of what these things look like, these galas, you know, cake eating boards. And so what's a cake eating board? You know, that was the kind of board that used to exist where I am, where they described themselves as a cake eating board. And when they had two tragic deaths of CEOs back to back within a 5-year period, they couldn't be a cake eating board anymore, but they didn't know how to govern because they just listened to what the CEO told them. And it's like, okay, we're doing great. We're doing this, we're doing that. And that's that old school style of leadership and engagement and board involvement. But we can't have cake eating boards anymore. You got to have boards that are really governing, that are doing the work, that are helping you to be sustainable. And how do we help to transition, you know, to that point? You know, then we move into this strategic planning age. We start talking about succession and indirect costs. And this good work mindset. You know, we do good work. And so because we do good work, people will give us money, they're going to give us resources. And, you know, we began this mindset of reporting and accountability, and we began to see a lot more growth in the sector. It's cool to be a nonprofit. It's cool to do good stuff for people. And we are growing and we're pretty sustainable. Now you get into it and it's like, okay, we still have strategic planning, but we also need a sustainability plan. And we need a succession plan, which is all part of that. We talk about the starvation cycle, the fact where it used to be that, you know, in the 80s and the 20s, you know, you have, you know, you don't want to pay more than 8 cents, you know, on the dollar for indirect costs, when it really costs you 18 cents on the dollar to run your administrative services. So now we move into this, it's okay to have this 18 cents on the dollar. So what are the true costs of your operation? And do you have an approved indirect cost rate? Or are you simply accepting that 10% that banks and others are saying, that's all we're going to give you. We're not paying for that. You know, we're not going to go above that unless you have an indirect cost rate. So you have to go through the work to get that rate. But guess what? Now you can get what it costs. You can get your 15 cents, your 18 cents, you know, on the dollar to run your program, because nonprofit boards and funders are starting to realize that they're harming your organization by starving you with those costs that you need to administer your program. And of course, we're increasingly in this mode where it's okay for nonprofits to consolidate. It's expected, you know, and it's desirable in many cases, because you hear funders saying, how many of these types of organizations do we need in one community? And so you have to ask yourself, you know, does it make sense for us to try to consolidate services? And then we have more technology that we're dependent on. We're legally fragile now, which is another big piece of sustainability. Back in the 80s, you didn't hear about people suing nonprofits. We do good work. You know, why are you going to mess with the nonprofits? Now you're just another organization with employees doing stuff, and we don't care that you are building housing, that you're paving roads, that you're giving people jobs. We don't care about that. You made me mad and we're going to sue, and whatever you did, you know, we're legally fragile. So it becomes a part of sustainability to think about, you know, what types of insurance and what types of resources are you conserving, and how are we training our leaders and staff and people connected to our organization so that we can minimize access, or I'm sorry, minimize the risk of being sued, because the rate of change is exponential now. It's happening so fast. It's very hard to keep up with, but it's not something that should discourage you. It's something to make you realize you need the resources of an organization where you can bring people together, like this organization, like the Florida Alliance, to really problem solve and troubleshoot and gain access to those training and resources and connections that you need. And of course, it's all about succession planning. Any comments on this or questions?
I have a question, and people use succession planning, that term, a lot. And, you know it's board, it's staff. But I mean, what happened to the concept if you had a good job description and you've got the resources? I mean, what's the thought there? I mean, because I'm asked all the time, who do you think, could succeed you? And I'm like, I don't know, you know, the universe is out there. Um,
That's a great,
I mean, it's a double, it's a question and it's also hard with, I don't know. I mean, and obviously we're tackling it with Terry, but I think, you know, a lot of us who have been in the industry for a lot of years grapple with this all the time. And I, I don't know. I mean, it's, um, what are all the elements, I guess, is my question, aside from the obvious?
so I think this is where we get a little caught up when we talk about succession planning, is the idea that we are planning a permanent replacement. Oftentimes when we hear succession planning, and that's what it is. Well, who's going to come after you and who can come and step into your shoes? And we really need to think about succession planning, not just in terms of a long-term strategy, but what's that short-term strategy? I'm going to go out for 6 months because I had this unexpected medical thing, and they're not looking to replace me, but someone's got to step into my role. And they don't want to go on the outside and try to find a temporary fractional CEO to come in and do my job, because they've got to learn the whole agency. So it's better that I've been working with someone and bringing them along, even if it's a board member. Who is that person that can step in during that 4-month period when I'm gone? Or even if I'm permanently gone, maybe they're gonna hold that position and carry on the work while we do a search, Terry, to your point, for that universe of people who are out there who can replace me. So the succession plan is not just this long-term plan, but it becomes that emergency tool. And so as we've developed our succession plan, it's like this: every position on our leadership team we've decided this person is the most ready. That doesn't mean they're ready, but they've got the most transferable skills to come in, and we're going to identify the gaps. And wherever those gaps are, that's where we're going to begin training and development, so that when the time comes, whatever that looks like, whatever throws us into that space, that person is going to step in, and they've been named. It's not because of their role, they've been named. And so even underneath them, we say, now, who are your people? So we have asked our managers and our workers, our employees, to identify themselves if they have an interest in leadership. So they can self-identify, and others are being identified by us, because we see leadership sometimes in people that don't see it in themselves. And so I see leadership, they want to be a leader, and we've got these two types, right? And we sit down and we say, you want to be a leader, what do you think you need? And this is what I think you're going to need. And for the one who I see leadership in, I'm sitting down with them and saying, you know, I see leadership in you. I see a future where you could do great things. Do you have an interest? And if you do, what do you think you need? And what do I see you need to help train you? So it becomes a training platform also. So this is, again, it's just investing in your people, mentoring and coaching, because when all is said and done, we're really talking about an emergency plan. Not necessarily someone that's going to replace us for the rest of our life. But it could end up being that person because you've done such a great job. And so I'll give you an example. On my leadership team, I've got to keep an eye on the time. On my leadership team, we had 6 people. Now we have 9 people, because I've had vice presidents that've been with the company for 18 years, And they're phenomenal, phenomenal leaders, but they've never sat at that leadership table. So whenever it was, who's ready to step in and be the next vice president? Who's ready to be the next COO? Who's ready to be the next CEO? Because they had never engaged with the board, they've never looked at the big picture of financials, they've never looked at the big picture of strategy, none of them were ever ready. And because of our growth, I said, well, rather than having all these people, they can't report to me, but they need to sit at that table so that we can expand the pool of people that are able to step into these various leadership roles, either on a short term or on a permanent basis. And we've downfilled their positions. We've brought them up. Who's there for them? I hope that helped, Terry. Is not a complete, solution, but I think if you think about it in terms of emergency planning, it's a little better to get your head around than long-term planning.
No, I mean, that's helpful, but I mean, it's a real challenge if you are a small organization,
Mhm.
a real challenge.
Yeah, I was just thinking you identified your management team is your leadership team is 9 people. That's our organization. So
Yes.
when we have smaller organizations, like we do have the temporary plan. So if our ED had to go out, then we know the next person there is me. I'm the one I'm being developed. I've been being developed the last 3 years with leadership and management and training and HR and all of those things. Beyond that, we have nobody. We've got newer staff, or we've got people that are not willing. So how can you dig into those deeper levels when, like what Terry was saying, you have a smaller organization? How do you tap that?
Sometimes it is a board member. And I know we don't like to think about board members as being interim staff, but with smaller organizations, it absolutely may be that it's a board member, and that's why you want to pick your board members very carefully. You want to get that board member who has accounting background, leadership background. You want to get that board member who has this kind of background and that kind of background. So that diversity of board, and then you all agree that, in case of my demise or my whatever, this person here is an ideal person for succession planning. Now, you got to be careful because you don't want them in your stuff right now while you're trying to manage and lead, right? But in some cases, they have identified a board member that will take that role. But because they're clear on their roles, they're not trying to overstep their boundaries. They just know that they're tapped. Let me move this out of the way so I can see. So addressing challenges of sustainability, we're going to sort of bring it home here. Requires a clear picture of your cost of operations, income sources, opportunities to save, opportunities to invest, opportunities to partner. And so you have to think about, how do you approach these topics? And I'm not going to discuss them right now. It says let's discuss as time permits, but you think about those questions. And if we want to discuss them during our final, 5-minute discussion, we can come back to those. But where to begin? We all know what a SWOT is. That goes way back in the day. So that's one place that you can begin, looking at your strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats, to see, where those gaps are and holes where we need to fill sustainability. I think it would be great to ask your finance committee or your treasurer, what do you think we need to gauge sustainability? So not what I think we need, but what does that external partner think we need? What are they seeing that potentially puts us at risk of sustainability? And that's a great heart-to-heart to have with members of your board and your board leaders. This matrix map we've talked a little bit about before. I've got a list of resources also here in a coming page that has a link to that information. You also want to revisit your strategic plan as far as what is it saying about sustainability? Do you even address it? And if not, it definitely needs to be part of your written plan for the future. And what is your, you know, there's so many things that affect sustainability. And so if you're not looking at that whole picture, including deferred maintenance, equipment, remaining life, all of these things that is going to cost money and investment, these are things that force us, and it doesn't matter what the size of our organization is. You know, these are things that are still going to impact our survivability. And then I like to say, what are you measuring? Even as a small organization, what are your key measurables? What are your deliverables? You know, and how often are you looking at those measures? And if not quarterly, then I would suggest a dashboard of these things that you're regularly communicating with your board on. This is how we're performing with cash on hand. This is how we're performing with, you know, quick ratio, our assets to liabilities. This is how we're performing with legal matters, you know. And how can AI help? And this is just this big, you know, thought on how we're transforming the nonprofit sector, you know, by leveraging AI tools and resources to begin, and you just play with them. You just got to start playing with them, even though we don't want to turn them loose on our workforce. I'm not ready to do that, but I've at least set up a committee, and this could be volunteers and staff, that's establish an AI committee and make sure you're including some young people. And even if you don't have them on your staff or on your board, bring them in as a volunteer from a college and have them sit on an AI committee to begin helping you think through how you can use AI to start solving some of these things that we do every day, you know, that are manual and that we really don't have to do. This is the ways that companies are using AI. And I put the resource for the ebook, which is a great ebook on how nonprofits are using AI, how companies are using AI, and it's a good resource. And so you'll have access to that. But this is a nice way to show you all the things that people are using AI for already. Virtual assistants, you know, automation of IT processes, and it can do it, but it's shocking and it's a little scary to see how much it can do, because it makes you think, well, why am I here? So anyway, I had some things that we might want to discuss. You know, what one thing can you do differently or add to your practice that will increase your organization's sustainability? So you can think about that. We can talk about that. But I've shared with you how I've expanded my leadership table. So that's one of the things that I've done. Is there one thing that you need to do differently? And what are your greatest threats to sustainability? And how are you preparing to address them? Does anyone have thoughts on any of these questions?
On the first one there, one of the things that I have been doing is taking a look, like you did, at the staff you have in place and thinking about what attributes they have, what development they could take, what their interests are in being a leader or growing within our corporation. And we've started developing people for the future, so that we've also are instituting a cross-training program, because we are small. So we've started cross-training some of our staff to be able to do some of the duties that kind of overlap anyway. so that
That's
that
great.
we can tap into, you know, kind of killing two birds with one stone, so to speak.
That's
And
great.
those are big things for us right now. And that's something we just started implementing, honestly, January 3rd.
And that will help you retain your staff also, especially the new
Yes.
generation that's coming up. You know, the Gen Zers, the Gen Y, Gen Z, the millennials,
Mhm.
they want engagement. They want to be empowered to do things. And if we're not giving them tools and resources and ways that they can contribute, they will move on to an organization where they feel that they're valued.
Correct. And we've hired a high school student to do some light clerical file work and those kinds of things. Tasks that are more cost effective for a
Mhm.
high school student to do than, you know, some of my upper level staffers.
Yeah.
And it's been a great experience. He's gaining all kinds of insight and excitement, and I have him for a couple of years because he's going to go to college locally. And I keep telling him I'm going to keep you forever because he's just like his work ethic, he just blends. And he's like,
Nice.
okay. He's like, okay. He goes, we can talk about that. We can talk about that. So the dream would be to get this guy. He's just turned 18, and to grow him. Ugh, that's like my
Well,
dream. 'Cause he's amazing.
and the state of Florida just passed just passed the law that kids who are underage now can work 30 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, so how are we using these resources? Because
Right.
they're working, they're trying to find other gigs. And if you can get someone in high school to work after school that many times, you know,
Yeah. He's been, like I said, he's an intern honor student, so I get him 2 full days a week. And I'm creating more work for him to do during the summer because he graduates this year. So so I can add him on more time because he's just been so beneficial and eager to learn. And that's what I'm looking at is his excitement to learn and to develop. So I'm all about developing him.
Sounds wonderful.
Hi,
Yeah,
this,
I'm so excited about it.
hi,
And I've
this
been
is
Terry, do
Anita.
you want me to sign off while you do this?
Oh, no. I think Anita had a comment. I'm just saying, I just put the end survey up there, so if you'll do that, but believe Anita has a question or a comment.
I was just going to make
Anita.
a comment that I do something similar. I'm very deliberate about the job development, training, leadership development, having people identify stretch goals every year to make them go beyond, what they're used to doing and what I would have them to do to help them to grow. And, making sure that part of our goal setting, there are professional development goals and personal goals involved, and we support it with our budget in terms of making sure that's possible. If it's somebody who wants to finish a degree or they want to get a certification in economic development or housing development, we make sure we support those. And I'm lucky that that I have the resources of the CRA and our nonprofit to make that happen. But otherwise, you lose people burn out, or they just look at it as a job. So we have to really, really focus on other staff as people. And I
Mhm.
try to step back when I can. And the other thing that I'm doing and I need to do more of is introduce staff to people that I know. You know, and encourage them to broaden their network. Where can
Mhm.
you go? Is it a chamber meeting so you can meet a new group of people who might be resources for you to help you do something you don't even know what it is yet? But if we don't, we're going to, our organizations will die out when we leave, or they're really, really struggle, or the good staff that we have, we're going to lose them for sure.
Absolutely. While they're doing the survey, I will just add to that, Anita, that our agency is doing that to an extent, but also if you are having people think about if you have limited resources, Tara and Terry, you can do some of this, but have folks sign an agreement that they understand, you know, that this is valuable, what it's worth. And while you may not be able to get it back, having them sign an agreement on front that they recognize the value of it and that if they leave before, you know, 1 year, you know, then attempts will be made, you know, to collect on that investment. Well, thank you all very much for the opportunity. I'm happy to, you know, visit more about this. If you all like, just my contact information is on the slide. Don't hesitate to email. I want to thank Terry for inviting me to discuss this topic with you all, and thank you all for your participation and engagement.
Thanks everybody for coming. You'll be getting a link so that you could watch this over and listen to the conversation, and look for that in a week or so. Any
Thank you.
questions, give me a call.
Thank